Welcome back everyone to another Something About Knuckles video. After so long, we're finally going to be talking about Something About Knuckles. I know it's been rough for you SAC fans waiting for another one of these videos or just waiting for the end of Something About Knuckles. But here we are to finally finish this year-long journey. The finale has been through a lot, from being just one part to splitting into two and later now into 3 parts, being delayed a few times and now finally releasing. So let's cover everything in this finale, along with many artists that deserve recognition for the amazing scenes they've done and maybe some ideas that didn't make it into the finale. All around, mostly interesting stuff. Shout out to Liam once again for all the info. Seriously, the true GOAT. And on to the video. Enjoy! Firstly, I want to point out how episode 7 drops on the 1-year anniversary of the first episode. Pretty neato stuff. I'm pretty sure the original plan was to have episode 7 be the finale and then 1 year after it began, but you know how that went. Anyway, we begin right where we left off, with the second part of the battle against the Titan of Sonic and the Titan of almost parasitic Bond. Everyone tries to fight on their own against the Titan, not much of a coordinated attack, and they get their asses kicked. This is also where we get into the first frame I really want to highlight, which is this incredibly smooth and cool movement from the Titan's fingers. They end up extending in a way kind of like tentacles. Liam in this frame informed me that he did actually end up animating the scene, which kind of helped him push his skills in a way to get into more unnatural and less structured kind of animation, which is really cool. Jenny helped out with making sure the scene is as clean as can be, and the lighting and the glows were crafted by Liam. Back to the fight itself, the kaiju rapidly continues to develop as the fight goes on, soon being able to use fucking laser eyes. I do want to discuss the kaiju's rapid development and what it reminds me of, but we'll get to that in a bit. Finally, the Sonic team gets the advantage as Big and Amy team up to remove one of the crystals out of the kaiju's eye, which flies straight down and almost comes back up if not for the help of Tails. But this doesn't stop the kaiju as it develops once more into a Cyclops eye. Let's take another detour to see what was going on behind the scenes of this fluid animation. I do think what definitely deserves a spotlight is Josh Floyd, who conceptualized most of the animatic and laid down the groundwork. Their Twitter will be in the description. Now onto the animated eye adaptation itself. This was made by both Zarx and Zanny, a formerly mentioned animator, part of Sex 7, and both Twitters will also be linked in the description. They do make some pretty silly and cool stuff, like Zarx's Gear 5 animation, which I noticed. Things get pretty bad once the kaiju evolves into technically a stage 5? 6? I can't even count at this point. Anyways, the kaiju absolutely demolishes everyone while Knuckles' voices continue to get louder. However, this time, something is different. Something is off. As Knuckles mentions the crystal, this very familiar sounding audio cue plays as a color palette switches to black. But never mind that, Knuckles is built different, so he decides to confront the kaiju face to face and finish this off for good. And my god, this scene is probably one of the best of the series. From the animation to the voice acting, we gotta start with the voice acting. Massive shout out to Kevin Rivera. His battle cry and just the voice acting of Knuckles in general in this series has been awesome. Now guess who animated Knuckles' rock hard battle cry? Well, none other than Wanchop. He actually made a few of these similar scenes in Something About Amy 1 and 2. Wanchop's rough kind of style is actually insanely cool and deserves some praise. Despite all Knuckles' attempts, the hero is knocked down to the floor and the crystal almost is ripped apart, but not completely. The kaiju unleashes a new Inferno attack, which unfortunately ends up being the death of Big. Let's actually take a break from all the tragedy and action for a little story time, shall we? The behind the scenes of Big's death is actually quite interesting. Liam seemed to have a different vision of how Big would die, similar to Vegeta's grand sacrifice in DBZ, where he basically went down with Boo. Back to where we were, Big's death will only help to weaken the team even more. No one has the mental or physical strength to fight anymore. So Amy tries something different. She tries to get Sonic to fight back and to get out of the Titan. Meanwhile, we return to the interior of Knuckles' mech as he's completely knocked out. Okay, trust me, this is the last time for this episode that we'll switch off to look behind the scenes, because I'm sorry, but the shot just looks so cool. It was all made by Wanchop, who actually has a small weakness for drawing complex shots in certain angles, but this one just goes so hard. Might be one of my favorite shots in the show. Knuckles awakens to see that everything has gone to shit, and Knuckles tries to get Amy to stop, but after the clash with the kaiju, the intercom broke completely. So Knuckles is forced to use his trump card, as he grabs the crystal that came from the kaiju, as the episode concludes with the kaiju's iconic roar. Honestly, I want to start by saying, it's crazy how far we've gotten. I honestly thought this would be a 4-part series just like Something About Amy, but this turned into something bigger than anyone could have ever expected. The fight scenes, the story direction, everything is amazing. I would say this is the best of the Secret History Tales saga. Now let's hop back into the battle. Amy continues to try and get Sonic to fight back, and you know what, for a moment it does actually work. The aura of the Titan switches from orange to blue as Sonic tries to fight back. Meanwhile, we see Knuckles grab the crystal chamber and begin extracting its energy. This becomes noticeable to Tails, Amy, and the kaiju immediately. As the crystal's energy envelops the entire mech, it begins to destroy it entirely. Knuckles says his final goodbyes before shoving the crystal into the main chamber of the mech, which begins one of the coolest transformations in the series. It reminds me a bit of the Warhammer Titan from AOT Season 4, and we have a lot of info for this one. This was a combination of many separate teams just to get it done. It was boarded by Josh. The animation was produced by Mizu, who also works on Mikeni, and made this beautiful fluid flame animation, with the reoccurring artist Anna Veldas back to finish coloring the scene. Anna Veldas also produced this render, as you can see on screen, which goes so incredibly hard. Lastly, the lighting was completed by both Liam and Jason. We still have one more shot to go as there's a wide angle in the same ongoing scene. This part was a combination of Dranzer with the baseline and Hotaru with cleanup, and they seem to have played a pretty vital role in the entire finale, so she may come up again. Also, they like 21 pilots too? Oh my god, I'm seriously finding clickies all over the place. Yo, if you see this video, you already got my respect. Anyway, back to where we were, a new name is also included in the mix. Rizaj, who colored in most of this as well. Jason and Liam doing the lighting once more. Thank you to Liam for some extra trivia too. I don't think I could say this any better, so I'll just read out what he stated. The lighting had to help sell the immensity of the power that's coursing into Knuckles. Enough so that being in the opposite end of the room from Sonic would have once been lit in an orange hue emitted from lava is now bathed in this ominous red from the shard. My god, just this one scene alone took half a page of writing to list down. This video might be a lot bigger than I anticipated. Back to the episode after that intermission, Knuckles transforms into his kaiju state with some insanely cool fluidity, also destroying the Sonic mech for good after being passed down from Sonic to Knuckles. With one huge explosion, Knuckles reaches into his kaiju state. The other kaiju also steps out of the lava pool that he was in for the entire previous episode and is ready to face off, kickstarting the best fight of the series and one of the coolest fights from MASH ever. The tendrils that Sonic used prior to destroying the Knuckles mech in episode 7 is now halted by Knuckles himself. As Knuckles' voices begin to echo in his mind, the two enter the destructive battle. Knuckles grabs Sonic's mouth and fires him into the air to avoid the beam as the Sonic kaiju tries to fight back. Now we have to get a bit back into dissecting for a second. Firstly, the scene felt a lot like when Kong tried to divert the laser beam Mechagodzilla was using to kill Godzilla in GVK. Hopefully I don't get a copyright takedown from this 5-second scene. Anyway, now on to some more behind the scenes. We definitely have to credit Josh Floyd for storyboarding the entire kaiju fight. Round of applause to this guy. Utilizing the arsenal from both kaijus in this fight while keeping it intense. Good work. This one beam diversion scene was from Zorx on rough animation, Hotaru and cleanup, and Ryan on color. Not much trivia here, but I just wanted to highlight this amazing part. Sonic's kaiju catches Knuckles off guard and Knuckles screams in agony as the two continue their duel. The voices continue to echo while the two fight, and their bloodbath causes so much destruction it almost wipes out the entire volcanic area the two are fighting in. We get to this really cool face shot of Knuckles covered in blood, which is roughed out by our friend Liam and Sandy with cleanup and Ryan with color. So small trivia from Liam, but the use of red in this scene is always used effectively to convey the eternal hatred and rage Knuckles has. Back to the clash itself, Knuckles rams Sonic so forward that they break out of the volcanic landscape and onto the outside. It seems the tides are in Knuckles' favor as Knuckles brings the kaiju down to its knees. This is the weakest we've ever seen the kaiju. Sonic's kaiju sends one last desperate beam to annihilate Knuckles for good, and Knuckles grabs onto the head of the kaiju and ends his nightmare for good. As the lines echo through Knuckles' head as the head of the kaiju is ripped to shreds and the kaiju sends one last shockwave to echo its death. But before we move forward, let's actually look at this satisfying kill in detail. This scene entirely actually had to go through some reworks as it felt rushed at the beginning. There's another way this could have ended, however Liam tells me that it can only be told through MASH Plus, and unfortunately I'm broke. But I encourage you to subscribe to MASH Plus for some more juicy and gritty Knuckles info. This is not a sponsor, by the way. I just love this series and they work hella hard. I mean, how could I not support them by promoting them? Back to where we were, Devil May Cry actually had a small inspiration when it came to the stomach pierce from the kaiju before Knuckles grabbed onto the head, until eventually the skull breaks and the shard is pulled from the head, resulting into a mass buildup of energy exploding forth like a nova. With the kaiju finished off for good, this means the end, right? We can finally return to peace after all this sacrifice. However, Knuckles in his kaiju state still roams. So unfortunately, the entire team has to give one last effort to eliminate their leader who valiantly fought for so long. So as Knuckles falls, someone else rises up. While the super uplifting music composed by Alex Walker Smith plays, we find out that none other than Sonic has returned. Here we are, at long last. After nearly 500 days, 497 days to be exact, Part 9 drops and the story finishes for good. This is also the only episode apart from the debuted episode to not feature a previously screened. Beginning where we left off, Sonic emerges from the destruction of the kaiju, just to find out that Sonic is incredibly fucked up. Honestly, one of the sickest designs of the series. Half-Mortal Sonic, as I dub him, was conceptualized by both Liam and Wanchop. With molten rock covering Sonic's legs, remnants of the Titan's crystal protruding from Sonic, and his eyes hollowed out with white fur on the tips of his spikes. This caught me so off guard, and the fact that this was shown early in a YouTube short caught me even more off guard. As Sonic rests, Tails seemed to be a little bit off now, returning to his suspicious demeanor we once knew. A lot of the beginning of this episode is looking back at the destruction that occurred, all the unfortunate victims, all the battles and sacrifices. As Sonic explains the horrific origins of the kaiju, we get this insanely sick shot by both Liam and Wanchop. Once again reminds me of Attack on Titan, but was actually inspired by a Black Beast of Berserk. This one shot shows Sonic attached to every previous evolution of the kaiju, which just looks so smooth. As Sonic's final line, he states that if Knuckles had fused with the kaiju and lived, everything would be obliterated. Amy asks Tails if Sonic will be okay, and Tails responds with the usual, "What are friends for?" Oh, well, we'll get back to this later on. I mean, this Tails is dead, but not the secret history Tails, right? We'll see. Anyways, as it is revealed, Knuckles is alive. The look of horror on Amy and Blaze's faces are painted beautifully, and then Knuckles slaughters them, later going on to kill the remaining survivors, with the shot of their hometown now in ruins, which was originally going to include more dead people on the floor. The bell tolls, the first time we've heard it toll since episode 2, I believe. A Chow Teddy also makes his first appearance from episode 1. The voices in Knuckles' head begin to talk normally as it is revealed someone was puppeting Knuckles the entire time, and it's none other than Amy? What a twist. A genius one at that, but we were so focused on Tails that we didn't even realize the true mastermind could have been Amy. Oh, but don't you worry, Tails is alive. We'll get to that momentarily. Amy opens up the everywhere portal that we've been waiting to see in such a long time and sizes down Knuckles so he's not a huge threat. Knuckles grabs Chow Teddy from the beginning before dropping it and losing all his humanity, moving forward to create some chaos, with the return of the music used in Something About Amy as the two enter the portal, concluding the chapter after so long. What a journey. I mean, this chapter honestly felt like a fucking indie show of its own. Everyone who worked on this, bravo. Maybe the pacing wasn't too good as some believe, but this was far superior than any previous installment. But we're not finished just yet. There are still some loose ends that needed to be tied up. So let's do one last show, shall we? This is not the end of the video, by the way. I'm just going to clear up several things in this mini-chapter. Firstly, let's get this out of the way. Remember in episode 7 where I mentioned the Kaiju's rapid development and what it reminds me of? Well, let's return to that point. This may not be intentional, but I feel as though the Kaiju's development over the course of the series felt a lot similar to Shin Godzilla. Here's a comparison. Phase 1 was introduced to us in episode 1, along with Shin Godzilla's first phase being introduced at the start of the movie. Both weak states can be destroyed, but the wrong decisions made by the opposing side led to them living. Phase 2 of the Kaiju was introduced to us in episode 3 and had a lot more durability and recovered from previous attacks. Shin Godzilla's second phase evolved to becoming bipedal and also became a lot stronger. Phase 3 of the Kaiju was seen in episode 6 as it crystallized over and became so durable it was a nightmare for the heroes to get it to fall. Phase 3 of Shin Godzilla was its prime phase where it was able to generate beams and was likely the strongest phase. The only way it was finished off was being frozen over. However, that is not the final phase. And ironically enough, Phase 3 of the Kaiju was also burnt to shreds, but adapted, turning into its final phase. Phase 4 was a fusion between Sonic and the Kaiju as it was now able to do godly things unable to do before. Maybe previous phases could have been finished off by the mechs, but this phase was so powerful another Kaiju had to finish it off. As for Shin Godzilla, we don't primarily see its next form in the movie, but more so as a model, which would have been horrifying to say the least. Anyways, with that comparison out of the way, we have another thing to go over, which is one of the most important topics of this video. Is Secret History Tails dead? Well, no. I'm sure by the time this drops, this will be outdated, because I hear an epilogue is in the works, which will clear out the rest of the story and branch out to chapter 3. Firstly, let's compare the two here, though. Secret History Tails and Something About Knuckles Tails. What do they have in common? Well, both have the iconic phrase, "What are friends for?" and both seemingly have lost their mind because of situations. For Sack Tails, it was probably because of the stressful situation with the Kaiju, and for SH Tails, he's just obsessed with Sonic. However, this is where things kind of branch off. Sack Tails seems to actually care a bit for his friends till the end. SH Tails is mostly just careless with Something About Amy characters because he knows that they're just puppets part of his plan. Here's my theory. I believe that ever since SH Tails breached into the Everywhere, essentially every version of Tails has become like him, his influence spreading throughout the multiverse. So essentially, he's doomed to be evil in every universe. Similar to Invincible, where Mark is evil in every universe apart from the main one where the story takes place. That's why the Titan killed him in the finale. Since Amy was partially puppeting Knuckles, she could have made Knuckles kill him before anyone else. This might have also been an order from Secret History Tails himself, and it may become a reoccurring thing for the rest of the series, where Tails dies. Because I mean, one's already bad enough, but what if there's two? That could mean trouble for our main Tails. It's a perfect catalyst for the downfall of Secret History Tails. I also want to highlight Eileen Montgomery, literally the hitting goat of the series. She voiced 90% of the cast for Something About Knuckles, and voices Crazy Amy in both Something About Amy and Something About Knuckles. But yeah, that's essentially all I have. So let's end this off now, shall we? So what's next? Most likely there's something about Shadow, or maybe we'll be surprised with a different chapter. What a wonderful journey. I just want to thank you viewers for giving the support, and I especially want to thank Liam for help along the way. Bro has been watching since my video on Something About Amy. This has been a crazy ride. Especially I want to thank Brooke. I know she'll be in the credits again, but my god, she's made thumbnails since the Secret History Tails video. Literally carrying my channel. Seriously, thank you so much. Oh yeah, speaking of which, I unlisted that video since it's now incredibly outdated and kind of embarrassing. I have better videos that deserve more recognition. I might have mentioned this before, but I was planning on making my last video on SAC after this, but I'd rather go out with a bang here. This is also my most anticipated SAC video ever. I salute you if you watch to the end. I also salute every single person who's written, storyboarded, colored, animated, or helped the series in some way. I may have not recognized you in any of these videos, but I sure as hell will for any future video related to MASH. One more thing I want to highlight is this art made back last year by that #1 guy, which I've never mentioned before, but is definitely deserving a highlight. Honestly, beautiful to see. Okay, I know this intro's taking a long ass time to end, but I really want to thank everyone, you know? Gotta cover all the bases. High five to the team. That's all for me. As always, I hope to see you in my next video, and thank you for watching.